If you would be kind, just find one neighbor and say, will you agree with me that we're both walking out of here with victory today? Now, y'all should have went crazy because both of y'all gonna have victory. Find another neighbor and say, neighbor, will you agree with me today that God is turning everything in our favor? If you believe it, come on, let's celebrate. Right where you are, I want you to take just 10 seconds and give God a believing praise. That's the praise that says, God, I might not see it in the natural, but this praise is to show you I still believe it. The door might be closed right now, but I still believe it. It might not look like I want it to look or feel like I want it to feel, but Lord, I still believe it. Give him a I believe it praise right now. 1, 2, 3, come on, praise. Oh, said. Truly we honor the presence of God that we feel in this house today. It is an awesome atmosphere that we feel because the Lord is with us today. I said he's with us today. And there's nothing like being in his presence. It's nothing like being where the Lord is. Because where the Lord is, the scripture says there is liberty. And I believe that there's liberty in this house today. We are so glad that you've come into this place that we call sanctuary to lift up the name of the Lord on this Sunday. And we reflect and look at how he's kept us all week long through danger seen and unseen. And that by itself is worthy of worship, worthy of praise. And I'm so glad the atmosphere is set. There's no pumping and prying today. Somebody walked in here like the scripture says. Enter his gates and enter his courts with praise. So there is a praise in the house today. At this time, we're going to ask if there's any first-time worshipers that you would stand to your feet, that we might acknowledge your presence. You don't have to say anything, but we do honor your presence here today. Do we have any first-time worshipers that are visiting with us? It's never been in this worship experience. If we do, if you would stand so that we can acknowledge your presence today. Amen. Amen. Well, we all home folks, but we do got some visitors. Amen. I'm so glad to have my mother-in-law in the sanctuary today. Come on, let's honor her. Amen. So glad to have the matriarch, which is my wife's grandmother, in the sanctuary today. Amen. God bless you. So glad to have my aunt in the back, Sister Aunt Nicole. Everybody knows her. We're so glad to have her. Amen. In the sanctuary today. Amen. I'm glad to have my sister-in-law, Sister Robin. Amen. You would stand. Amen. And her third brother Brian, we're so glad to have him. Come on, let's just celebrate this whole crew. My niece and nephew, Brother Noah, and Sister Jenny. Y'all just stand. And not only that, we just celebrate. God, while you're standing, don't forget to hug your neighbor and let them know you're glad that they're here also. Amen. Let's take a few moments and hug a neighbor and let them know out of all the places they could have been, we're glad that they're here. Detroit. Take a few moments, just greet somebody and say, I'm glad you're in the house today. shout out to that concert last night. Come on, come on. I need y'all to give a shout out. It was absolutely awesome last night. I know some of you were not able to be here in person, but I saw the folks were watching it live stream. And it was a blessing. The glory of God was all up in this place. That's why you feel some type of way today, probably. Folks were shouting all over this place. And there was just a great spirit and a great move of God. Something happens when you come into an atmosphere to give Him glory. It was a release concert, I call it, where they just sang to God and acknowledge all that He is. And the Bible is true that He inhabits the praises of His people. And we just thank God for those who participated, that made it an awesome, awesome, awesome encounter. Those that have your Bibles today, if you would turn with me to Exodus. Chapter number 3. You get it if you would stand to your feet today. I done sung hard and got my dance on, so I'm going to just teach this morning. Try to stay in first gear. So I'm going to try to stay in first gear. Because I really want to download some things to you. I want to download. Jesus, you're the center of my joy. All that's good and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Jesus, you're the center of my joy. Jesus, you're the center of my joy. All that's good and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Jesus, you're the center of my joy. Can we sing it one more time? You're the center. For Exodus chapter number 3. Now we're starting there. Get to work. If you have it, say amen. Amen. If you don't have Exodus, I feel sorry for you. Because that's the next book after Genesis. And we're in the 3rd chapter. All right, it says, now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of the Midian. And he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, here am I. And he said, draw not nigh hither. Put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, and he was afraid to look upon him. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. Verse number 8, and I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of Egypt, of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land unto a good land, and large, and unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto a place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppress them. Come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. Verse begins with Moses being on the backside of the mountain in the desert, as if being in the desert wasn't worse or bad enough to know that you're on the backside of a bad place already. About verse number 10, the Lord is saying, I'm sending you in front of Pharaoh, which Pharaoh would be the main man or the front man of that region. By one command of God, man goes from the back to the front. And we're in this month of receiving marching orders. If you would be so kind and look at a neighbor with sincere strength and force of tone, and tell them these words: back to the front. Back to the front. Now I know y'all were good students in school, and you never sat in your desk and started talking to somebody that was behind you and the teacher would have to call your name. Say, excuse me. Back to the front. If you look at somebody else and say, I have a direct order. This is a direct command. Back to the front. Father, in the name of Jesus, I thank you for this moment that you have caused us to hear. Be clear in that which you have to present to us. God, I thank you because our hearts are open. God, I thank you that what we're asking for is not just to walk out of here with the residue, for you told the woman at the well that you can put a well of living water inside of us. So I'm no longer satisfied with the residue when I can have a reservoir. God, right now the reservoir that you place inside of us, stir it up, that it begins to erupt. Yeah. And if it erupts, it will have to interrupt my normal scheduled process of opinion, allowing to influence my decision. But if you cause it to erupt, it will interrupt the things that I've allowed to get in the way from doing what you've called us to do. Have your way, oh God. Speak like never before. Let this be a mighty moving meeting. Hallelujah. That when we walk out of here, it'll be impossible. It will be impossible. We will be incapable of trying to be the same way, because your glory is going to be too heavy. It's going to cause transformation in our ideas and our thoughts and our perception, God. You're moving us from faith to faith. So the faith that I got here with, by the time I leave, I'm going to be on another level of faith. Have your way, oh God, and we'll praise you for it in the name of Jesus. If you don't mind, put those hands together and give God glory, because you're literally going from back to the front. Amen. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. I am moved in this month to stay in the theme of marching into it. And it just seems like the cadence of these lessons that he's given us are given in where we receive an instruction from the Lord. And anytime you receive instruction from the Lord, you have to have the sagacity to be able to properly discern it and understand how you have to deal with the gravity of the moment and the gravity that's in the moment. When we think about gravity, it always becomes an obstacle when you want to go to another level. Because gravity, in the sense from physics, is the power that attracts one towards the center of the earth, or it's a pulling force. Gravity, more in another expression, would deal with the sincerity or the seriousness of this moment. Whenever we encounter God who's on another level and he speaks a word to us where we are, his word, by the characteristic of his being, has to cause you to rise. And anytime his word comes into you, then you have to understand that you're going to have to be not caught up in the system of normal gravity. When we talk about gravity, there's some individuals that we have to give recognition to that has helped us understand the influence of gravity. If you've been in school at some level in science, you heard of this individual by the name of Sir Isaac Newton. Sir Isaac Newton was an individual who interrupted the flow of the Greek philosopher who had believed that the nature course for which we function in was so much nature and natural that it could not be changed, and therefore they thought that everything evolved around their ideal. But it wasn't until Sir Isaac Newton began to study the fact that things that move, they're moving because something is pulling them. He came into a consciousness of this. They believe in story form that he saw an apple fall, and when he saw the apple fall, he knew something was working behind the scenes. It was in his recognition or recognizing of this force that we call gravity that he realized that there was a power that pulls, and that power that pulls is relative to the core of the earth. And I'm not trying to bore you with a whole lot of scientific information, but just walk with me here. The core of the earth in which we live is being pulled by this center source of strength, which is the sun. For the natural man, they look at the natural sun, but for the spiritual beings, which we are, we know that we should be pulled by the sun. It was in his understanding of gravity, he begins to talk about how it is one of the four elements of force. When you deal with the elements of force, you're dealing with gravity, you're dealing with electromagnetic force, you're dealing with strong force, you're dealing with weak force. The only reason I'm bringing up gravity is because anytime we go on another level, we cannot allow the law of gravity to define the ability that God has placed on us, because he has another level of assignment. To understand that gravity is a force, it's a great force, because the gravity force keeps me from floating, but gravity can't keep me from flying. Okay, let me rephrase that in this way. You can have a force that can pull you down, but just because it pulled you down doesn't mean it can hold you down. And there were some brothers by the name of the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers, we know, they grew up in Dayton, and for just history's sake, they were not ordinary brothers because they were sons of bishop. Their father was a bishop. A lot of folks don't know that, but their father was a bishop who traveled a lot, and because he traveled a lot, he was able to go to different regions and different areas, and he came across a certain toy that was a helicopter that intrigued the Wright brothers, and from that they became inquisitive about this thing of going to another level or flying. The Wright brothers were unique brothers because they had great wisdom, but yet they had no diploma. If you study the history of the Wright brothers, they never graduated, but yet they became the expert on apparatuses that takes us to another level. Y'all understand? They did not have the credentials that came from man, but they had the influence and insight that can only come from God. The Wright brothers had a unique life. I only know a little history because I went to Central State University, and there was a place at Central State University that was named after this young man by the name of Paul Laurence Dunbar. Paul Laurence Dunbar was a great African-American poet writer. You ought to look up some of his writings, and he write in old African dialect. By the way, he was a great writer who was friends with the Wright brothers, because before the Wright brothers ever became men who created flying understanding, they had a newspaper. Catch this, they wrote a newspaper and never graduated. I'm going somewhere here, just walk with me. They had a newspaper, and then that newspaper lasted for a while, but they went into what they call commercial publishing, and that's where they connected with a fellow classmate by the name of Paul Laurence Dunbar, where they published his work. They became more intrigued with going to another level, that they shut the paper down, they shut all that down, and they got interested in doing what they call bicycle modeling. They had a bicycle shop, and they understood how to fly by understanding the principles of a bicycle. They understood that anything that's going to move, it must have balance. And in order to have balance, you have to have stuff going with you, and you've got to also have some stuff going. Y'all missed me right there. Because sometimes I think we want to go to another level, but it takes something to go against you that helps you get to where God really wants you to be. It is in that concept of context that I deal with gravity, because gravity and going to the next level becomes something that is not to be ignored, but it has to be dealt with. Anytime they understood the process, the Wright brothers and even Sir Isaac Newton understood that there will always be principles, and there will always be laws, and there will always be things that will be there. But whatever's there can be moved if you find something greater than what's there. meaning he wrote the first law of motion, saying something at rest will always be at rest until it runs into something that makes it unrest, meaning there has to be something that you run into that moves you out of the place that you're in. There has to be something greater than where you are that will pull you out of where you It is in the movement of understanding that if greatness takes on another level, what is the process of going to another level? Well, I'm glad that you asked me. There are 4 things that they say it takes to go to another level. It takes lift, it takes gravity, it takes thrust, and it takes drag. Lift is the process of having something draw you up. If you're going to have lift, you got to have something that draws you. Gravity, I've already kind of mentioned that. That is the force that pulls you down. You can't go to another level if you don't have something drawing you up while you're dealing with something that pulls you down. You've got to have something that thrusts you. That means something that draws you forward. But yet, while there's stuff that draws you forward, you've got to deal with drag. And drag is that thing that pulls you backwards. I came to tell you, no matter how great you are today, there will always be something that will try to interrupt your greatness. There will always be something that will try to cause conflict to your peace. But you've got to be strong enough to say that greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. God has a way of bringing revelation by circumstances that changes your perspective. I say that in deep thought, but I think it from an elementary state because I ran into that when I had my youngest son named Spencer. There was the holiday that most children love to celebrate, and that is December 25th. I'll never forget that he was making out his Christmas list one Christmas year, and being the father that I am, I had not given him the total revelation about Christmas, so he just thought you name it, claim it, and that settles it. He asked me and his mother for a particular element for which I could not get from Amazon Prime. I couldn't get from Toys R Us. I couldn't get from Walmart. He asked me and his mom for some pixie dust. He asked us for pixie dust. I knew I was in trouble then, Marquel, because I knew I couldn't order pixie dust. I knew then that a revelation of truth was going to have to come because his request has brought me to my limitation. See, as long as you're not brought to your limitation, you'll keep trying to prove to other folks what their request can be done by your ability. But there are certain requests that will hit your life that you have to say, we're going to have a talk. Because I finally come to a place where I've got to be honest, I ain't going to be able to. Is there somebody in here that has lived long enough that you had to be honest and say, I'm really not Superman, I'm close? It was in that movement that he wanted something that will cause him to rise, cause him to fly. And I had to be honest with him and say, baby, it don't work like that. The only way you're going to fly, you got to get in something that can lift. Now I'm ready to get into my text. Yeah, in Exodus is a heavy book because it literally tells you what it's about by its title. Exodus really means that you're coming out of something. Look at your neighbor and say, I'm coming out. You can't read Exodus and stay in anything because it's too much ammunition that gives you principles and practices that should change your perspective and cause you to process from one level to another. It is in Exodus chapter number 3 that we run across the main character in the sense of Exodus. things. It is this gentleman that we call Moses. Moses is unique because he is born to two individuals who had already had children, but when they had Moses, they had him at a very disturbing time. Most time, destiny arrives during disturbing time. Okay, I say that in the sense that sometimes when God chooses you to do something great, it's a lot of time when your plate is already filled or there's already stuff going on that's trying to keep your attention from doing what God says do. Have anybody, can you bear witness and say, I know that's right. You could have called me a week ago and you would have had all my attention. How are you going to tell me that you want to use me now and I don't have a job? I just got, y'all not helping me. I just went through the hardest season of my life and now you want to tell me to go speak? I'd rather not speak. You should have had me speak when everything was going good and everything was working in my favor. How you going to call me right? Gets pregnant right during the time that Pharaoh decides to make a decree. I had two other babies and we didn't have a problem. Now, when I'm having this child, I'm pregnant under pressure. So now Moses, by sake of God always knowing how to prepare you for the purpose that he's placing you in, allows him to develop under. He didn't choose the time, God did. I need somebody to understand God is in control of all time. That's why he works things according to his own counsel. Okay. It is in that movement that Moses' mother has a baby during the time of the decree. And you know the story. When she has the baby, she looks at the baby and sees that the baby is goodly. And we get excited about the fact that he's a goodly child. But sometimes I add tension to text and wonder what if the child was badly. That's how I'm talking. Y'all talk now. But you say, I only go through it if it's good enough. Because if it's not good enough, it's not worth the stress. But I'm so glad in the text that she said he was goodly. Somebody ought to get excited because no matter how bad your situation was, you was too goodly to let the bad situation take you. Okay. Good. Okay. She keeps the child, the Bible says, for around 3 months, means for a season or as long as she could keep him. She kept him hidden as long as he could be hidden. I always have to deal with the fact of the time to know they must have done a very good job to be able to hide a child for 3 months in a tent. They were not in an apartment complex. They were not where they did not have intermingling with other folks, but to be able to hide a crying baby and nobody goes to tell on you. It's worthy just to discuss it just a few moments because you gave birth to something and other folks gave birth, but they lost what they gave birth to, but you still got what you gave birth to and nobody's told on you yet. You gotta catch the text. The Bible says at this time they were making a decree that any male child they had to get rid of it. So you know there were other mothers who were pregnant at the same time that she was pregnant, and when they had a baby, they had to give that baby up and put it in the river. But here comes Moses' mother who was pregnant at the same time, and at first when she was pregnant, some historical value says that she didn't hide it because they didn't have a sonogram. So she didn't know whether she was having a girl or a boy. She didn't know what she had until she had it. And then once she had it, she had to hide it. Y'all missed my preach right there. Sometimes you don't know what you got until you see it. You're just carrying it and you're excited to have something that you're carrying. Is there anybody in here that can be honest and say, I don't know how great it is inside of me, but I'm just glad to know that God has trusted me to give me something.
Good, Pastor.
What happens then now that she hides the baby for a season, which means there has to be planning, there has to be procedures to be able to hide something that's growing, to hide something that's moving, hiding something that's living. We know the story that after a while she had to put the baby in a baby ark and put it in the water and put it in the water right at the place where Pharaoh's daughter now would draw Moses out. Draw. Y'all missing my introduction. You can't go to another level if you don't have something drawing you. You got to have lift, you got to have gravity, you got to have thrust, you got to have drag, and all in the process of going to another level, you got to have something that draws you. If you don't have something that draws you, then you're not ready to go to another level. There has to be something that gets you out of what you're in and pulls you in the direction of the destiny that God has already proclaimed before the foundation. It is that movement that he draws Moses out. And after he draws Moses out, because you cannot automatically have what it takes if you haven't been through deliverance yourself, okay? Because she didn't have what it took to provide for what the baby needed. She had to find somebody who had been through delivery. See, you can't nurture if you haven't been through delivery yourself. The Bible says even though she drew Moses out, she knew she couldn't nurse him, because just because you drew him doesn't mean that you could control him in this context of scripture. She drew him out and she was just an instrument for God's using. And sometimes God will use you, but you still got to depend on his way, because you can't do it without him. She gives the baby back to the mother. The mother raises Moses, grows Moses up, and then brings Moses back to Pharaoh's daughter. Now Moses lives in the house with Pharaoh, So that meant in one day he was in the poorhouse and ended up in the palace. In one day he went from being behind to the front. He went from being from behind to the front. Now he's in Pharaoh's house, growing up, eating the best of stuff, having the best of everything. But lo and behold, he comes into an event where he sees his Hebrew brothers being beaten by an Egyptian. And what happens is that it brings friction from the inside. He didn't ask for it to cause him to act nasty. He didn't ask. He didn't have no desire. Probably that morning when he woke up, it was not on his agenda to act crazy. It was not on his agenda to go off that way. Can some of us just be honest and say, when I woke up that morning, I had no idea I was going to have to go off. Y'all, I wish somebody would be honest and say, sometimes my crazy ain't premeditated. It's not y'all have seen some of y'all got premeditated crazy. I use that loosely, not to deal with nobody. I've done no evaluations on nobody. Let me preface that so y'all don't think I'm giving any patient pastoral detail. He didn't have premeditated crazy. He didn't. But when he saw what was happening to his brothers, even though he's placed in the palace, it didn't change the connection within. It didn't change the connection within so much that he goes off. And he goes off to the point that he doesn't just hurt what's hindering, but he destroys. Come here. He destroys what's hindering. See, some folks will just hurt what's hindering, and then after you hurt it in this season, it shows up. So what happens is he brings deliverance to people that are not ready mentally to be delivered. He brings deliverance to a people that's not ready to be delivered. And what they do, they turn a good thing into a bad thing because they're gravity. He's saying, y'all saw what I did, and the first thing they want to use is what he did in a bad way. I need to go ahead and point a point for purpose. Sometimes folks will misuse your purpose because they didn't do it their way. It didn't happen their way. Move it here. So often in process, God will use you the way he wants to use you, and sometime when he's using you the way he wants to use you, you might not find agreement with other people on lower level. Because the level that God has you on does not always operate on the same understanding of folks that haven't had or been through what you've been through. I wish I could be honest and say you don't understand that Moses had been under pressure since he was a baby. How dare you fight my brothers? Not only are you fighting my brothers, but you've been fighting me. The reason I'm where I am right now is because of the decree that I didn't even get to grow up like the rest of my brothers and sisters because of what you guys been doing. Sometime enough is it, y'all are looking at me. Think about it. Moses said, it's that same spirit y'all got that made me leave my mama and daddy before I was ready. But the divine assignment took me through an avenue of abandonment that brought a surety and authority. Y'all better help me here. Sometimes the avenue that the assignment has you on will take you through abandonment so it can give us surety and authority. Y'all better help me here. If all I've been around is folks that connected with me, and I never been through a season where I had to stand on my own 2 feet, I would fall out right now. But thanks be to God, all things have been working together for my good. Sit down, give me 5 minutes. Trying to stay in first gear. So he's going off because the spirit of oppression, spirit of drag is against him. So what happened, he's 40 years old and he has to leave. 40 represents a generation. Somebody say one generation. 40 years old and he leaves. He's on the run and he runs into Jethro's daughter. He's on the run while he's developing a relationship. He gets into relationship because he was placed on the run. God has a unique way of divine hookup. He hooks up with a priest. History needs to be revisited because his mother and daddy came from the Levi. Levi, who is the third child of Jacob and Leah. Third child, who becomes the priestly. Out of all the people to hook up with, you hook up with another PK. Y'all, God is so good that he can make you run into somebody that can relate to you. I need somebody that, y'all better help me in this place. See, when I'm on the run, I don't have the time to train you on how to handle what it takes to live at this level. There are some folks that better come in knowing how to handle this level because this ain't their first rodeo. I wish I had help in here. Look at your neighbor and say, are you down or you not down? That means if we gotta go for it, we're gonna go for it. If we're not, that means you ain't gonna sell me out. Because right now I'm on the run. And I don't need you looking at me saying, you know what? He's over here. Then it could be be a bounty on him. Y'all better help me here. And if there's a bounty on Moses, then folks are not hooking up with Moses for purpose. They're hooking up for a payday. You got too much greatness to negotiate with folks that are looking at your worth and not your purpose. Come here. And when I say worth, I'm talking about what can I get out of you? No, you don't understand. It's not about what you're going to get out of me. It's about what God is going to do with me. So he grows up. He grows with Jethro, who's a priest. He's out of the Levitical tribe, which will be the priest. So he's getting training for his next dimension, even though it was brought through by disaster. This is where he's at. He's hanging out with his father-in-law, and his father-in-law says, you just can't hang out with me. You got to work to work. So now Moses is out in the desert. You're still dealing with the appetizers. I'm already in my desert. Y'all ain't helping me in here. I know it's desert. I'm trying to get your mind on that. He's in his desert. And he's leading flock in a dry, hot place. He's leading things that don't talk his language. In a dark, dry place. Come here. Text gives us insight that has to be dealt with. It says he's on the backside of the desert, coming to the mount of God. Backside of the desert. Okay. If a desert is dry, through and through, what makes the front look better? Can you look at a desert that's dry, no water, it's dry, plain area? It looks the same. But when you deal with front, we understand the beginning of a thing. When you deal with back, meaning end, he had journeyed to the end of his desert. Come on, look at your neighbor and say you're at the end of it. You're at the. I know it's been hard. It's been 40 years. You spent 40 years in the palace. Now you spent 40 years in your desert. He comes to the back end of the desert, and we begin to see things that are apparent. One illumination of the text is that if you're in the hot sun all day, your eyes, you can become, like they say in the snow, you can be snow blind. You can be sun blind. You can't tell light from light because everything looks light. The mere fact that he's able to recognize a bush and fire suggests that he's been in the desert so long that the daylight was dimming and it was becoming dark. Y'all better catch me here. So now the reason he's able to see the bush on fire is because he's been in the desert so long that he can't even but you gave it your attention. And the only reason it's got your attention is because it's captured in your vision. If you can go through the desert of your life, this is a preach point, but I ain't gonna go there, and keep your vision, you're ready for promotion, okay? If you can go through the hardest seasons in your life and still believe you can fly, even though you don't have a diploma, I wish I had help here. If you can believe what God says when everything around you is saying it's impossible, then you're ready for it. Can I take 5 more minutes and take it a bit further here? What happens is Moses looks over at the bush. He looks at the bush, and the bush is on fire. The bush is on fire, and the fire is in the midst. So he's giving detail. Not only is it on fire, but now it's in the midst. It's in the midst. To deal with the fire being in the midst, and we're dealing with God using it to speak through, which is called, from a theological term, a theophany, where God can get into something to get your attention, and he can consume it and make it himself, but yet still be who he is. He can get in a situation and let the situation speak, but yet he's still God enough to be bigger than the situation. Are y'all with me here? He speaks out of the fire that's in the midst of the bush, because the bush is on fire, but it's not consumed, which means we know that fire is an uncontrollable thing, but it depends on who's starting the fire, because there are fires that are purposeful, and then there's fires that burns a whole forest down. I came to tell you that this fire is not for the breaking, but it's for the making of you. I came to tell somebody that the fire that God is sending in your life in this season is not to tear you down, but it's to take you to another level. Come on here, 3 Hebrew boys, help me preach a little bit. It was the 3 Hebrew boys that were thrown into a fiery furnace, and the Bible says that they lifted up the fiery furnace 7 times hotter. They're in something that should have consumed them, but this fire ain't a fire that can consume you. This is a communicating fire. This is the kind of fire that takes you to another level. This is the kind of fire that helps you in the upper room. And it was on the day of Pentecost. And when Pentecost had fully come, there was a sound of rushing mighty wind. And the Spirit sat upon them. And it was as a fire. The God that I serve, he's looking for somebody that he can set on fire. Hey, y'all looking at me. You can't go to where God wants you to go until you let him set you on fire. Is there anybody in here that can lift up their hands and say, Lord, sit on me, sit on my mind? Okay, I'm gonna have to leave you here. It is this, give me this last point. We'll come back next week. I'm trying to stay in first gear. Okay. It is the bush has fire. The fire has not totally consumed the bush. So we see the fire and the bush is still recognizable. That's a paradoxical statement. Because God can consume you, but yet sometimes your identity of the old you is yet still visible. Okay. We sing songs that sound good, but sometimes we have to do a fact check. Well, I went to the water. Water was so cold. It chilled my mind. that baptism pool. And we baptize you and bury you in the name of Jesus. Bring you up. If you had a corn on your right pinky toe, after we bring you out that water, the fire is on you. You're listening. But that corn, I wish I had 5 people that said that's what I needed. Because the fire was on the bush, but I still can tell it was a bush. There will be fire. Think about it. The fire was on it, but you still knew it was a bush. Now, this is it. He says, I'm going to turn and see why the bush is what? Not consumed. I want to know why the bush. Look at this. Because it messed with me. Verse number 3, and I'm going to leave you here because I want you to come back next week. So I'm going to leave you on the cliffhanger. And Moses said, I will now turn aside. Insight to turn because what you recognize. Nowhere here does God say turn. What he recognizes makes him make a turn. Okay. And see this. Somebody say this. Great sight. Look at them and say, this great sight. We're watching 2 great things looking at each other. Okay. If you cross-reference, when the mother looked at the baby, she said, this is I can't just turn this way. Because when I look at it, I see fire in it that's not consumed. There's a fire in Pharaoh, come here, that wants to consume all the babies. But there's something great about Moses, come here, that doesn't let the fire, come here, consume. Now Moses looks at this and he said, this is a great sight. Because I know what great sights do. Y'all better help me here. God uses, my God, help me, Jesus. Sometimes in this life that we live, God will let your life go full circle. He's looking at a bush. When his mother tried to save him, what did she take? An old bush. And damn, you're looking at me. And dabbed it with swamp. See, he said, this ain't the first time I've ever seen a bush be used. And the last time a bush was used, look at where I, y'all better help me in here. Don't you? Okay. He looks over there and he says, I want to know not why the fire didn't burn it, but why the bush is not receiving. He said, I don't know why the bush is not burned. The fire's there, but the bush ain't active. Bush, you know you're supposed to be burned by fire. I'm flipping y'all so crazy. Because I can't have takeoffs without gravity. Saying this for 4 points. Again. You got to have one at a time, lift. You got to have something that draws you. You got to have gravity. You got to have something that pulls you. You got come there, the Lord speaks to him. What the Lord said first, say, take off your shoes. Because we're going to have takeoff. We ain't going to have anything that's going to get in between you and what I'm directing. Because this is a direct, and you're taking off when you take off. The sooner you take it off, you'll experience takeoff. The sooner you take off, you will experience takeoff. You'll never have takeoff if you don't take something off. Now, how fast you want takeoff will determine how fast you take it back to the front. Not back to the middle, but back. But it's going to take takeoff. Last thing, and I haven't held y'all too long, is that he speaks. He says, stand barefoot, because where you are is holy ground. This next phase of your life, if you can play musician, you're going to be under holy hostage. And if you know anything about being held hostage or watched it on TV, the first thing that they do with every hostage situation are taken, they create a line of community. I'm getting ready to be held hostage by holiness. But I'm okay with it because I'm taking stuff off. Somebody in here today, your life is going to change so swift if you learn how to respond to a direct command. Some of us have not been military trained. So you still take commands as comments and suggestions. A direct command is not to be infiltrated with your own feelings or filtered by your desires. It is to be responded in total obedience. To respond in total obedience. Because not obeying a direct command will get your butt court-martialed. And too many of us are behind because we keep letting our butt get in the way. I would go, but I would do it. Aren't you tired of being behind? In your dessert? Stand to your feet. I really want to make a deposit in you today. I felt moms I wanted to preach, but I need you to get this because this is too much. Be right back in it next week because there's other levels in this. Because you can't come here and not take something off. It's improper etiquette in those customs to walk where you've been and take where you've been all through my house. When you got to the door, you had to take those shoes off. And then we had to wash your feet. Because washing your feet gave me a chance to check your soul. Yeah. We got too many folks that won't have liftoff to the front. You started out in the front. You did. How can you be in the mind of God and be in?
Come on, preacher.
If I'm in his mind, he's out. He's the beginning. The mere thought that he thought of me puts me in the front. But he's